Hello, everybody. This is Amber from Equalize Digital. I am starting talking. Now I see a number, so we might actually be live streaming now. I'm always not sure when it's going to start, but we are live. I am coming to you live from my laundry room because I had so many problems with live streaming yesterday on the WP Product Talk podcast that I was like, I need to go plug into my modem. So hopefully it will be a little bit better performance, but I have a weird plain white background with a tiny door that it makes me look really tall. The door under my stairs. But anyway, I am joined today by Ben Ritner from Stellar WP and Kadence. Ben, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I'm part of the Stellar WP team. So I kind of am senior director of product. I'm thinking about product across all of our product line, but I started Cadence, more than 10 years ago. So I'm still heavily involved in the direction and the product decisions around Cadence. And I actually still contribute a decent amount of code to Cadence.
Which is
So
amazing.
fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I am so glad that you decided to join me today. For everyone watching, please, if you can, give us a big thumbs up wherever you are watching. Liking the video helps us with our reach. Also, if you are in the chat and you want to post comments, we would be happy to answer questions or share your comments and provide feedback on them as we're going. But a little bit of background, just so everyone is aware, if this is the first time you are tuning in, is that I have been working to remediate the WP Product Talk website, which is built with Kadence. There have been some stuff I've been able to figure out, some things I haven't. So I was like, I'm going to go to the expert himself and see if he would be willing to come on. So I very much appreciate you, Ben, being willing to come on and share some thoughts. Before we flip over to that, though, I wanted to ask like some background information and allow you to kind of share what Kadence has been doing with accessibility and your approaches to that. So I'm sort of curious, what is Kadence doing with regards to accessibility right now, and maybe how has that changed over time?
Yeah. So I think I very much approached it from like a early on, like learn as much as I can, because especially early on, didn't have the resources to get audited and things like that. And so I have tried to really dive in to learn accessibility. And I think that that's helped influence a lot of where Cadence is at. Now, our current state is we have Amber doing these amazing audits for the Stellar company across the board, whether it's the website, like Cadence's website, or other products in our websites in our portfolio, or even the products themselves. So doing audits on like the back end and the things that LearnDash controls on the front end, things like that. So then I have the team messaging me being like, hey, Amber says this should be like this, and I'm coming in and going, okay, how do we make that work with Cadence? What's the right approach? How do I not make this, how do we automate this as much as we can where it should be? Because it is a lot to think about when you're trying to build a site. Just to think about like, how's this going to look on mobile? How's this going to look on desktop? Which is your common use cases. And then to have to think about how is a screen reader going to process this is like another whole level that people, the eyes glaze over, and it just makes it really hard. And we want to try to take a lot of those things out. So I think that's largely been the approach. I've really encouraged our team to dive in and try to understand accessibility, actually use a screen reader and understand how that works, and one, how frustrating it is, but also just to understand like what is important. So right now we're currently doing a rewrite of Cadence Blocks, which we announced a little while ago. We're working on Cadence Blocks 4.0, which is like kind of a whole new structure in terms of how we're doing some of our core blocks. So the section, the row layout, some of that stuff is getting a core switch. We're going to kind of integrate into it a whole global style framework that's going to be really important. And then from that we're taking the best of what we know and coming in and changing some stuff. So one in particular, which Amber and I talked about last fall, is that testimonials should be inside of a block quote in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of the structural stuff that will change of like, hey, best practice is testimonials should be inside of a block quote. So there's some HTML changes there that are a little bit trickier to do if you're just doing a migration path. But
yeah, I'll say one thing I thought was really interesting that you've told me in the past is the way Kadence is built structurally just behind the scenes actually enables you to push some of the HTML improvements that you're doing out even to existing blocks. Because I know one of the issues with WordPress core itself and some of the other builders is that once you've inserted a block into the page, there is no way to fix it, right?
yes.
Like you then have to like delete it and insert a new version if you want the fixed or better accessibility version if that patch came along later. And I thought it was neat that you all have figured out a way to do that without requiring a bunch of extra work on your content creators.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and even going forward, everything in 4.0 is all built that way, where if we need to fix some HTML, we'll do it. We can do it at any time without having someone have to go in and update the page, things like that. So yeah, we've done a lot of that. When we did Block 3.0, we moved to a lot of that style. So like, we just recently updated the button block to, in certain situations, automatically use the roll button if it's being used as a button and not as a link, and then giving the user also the ability to set something that they know is a button in that role.
So like an example that we talked about with this is when you want to trigger a modal or a pop-up, a lot of people just insert a button block because it looks like a button, but it's actually a link. And you guys have figured out a way to dynamically tell in some scenarios, hey, this is actually triggering a modal, so we're going to make it a button instead of a link.
Yeah, and so like with, we released an update to Kadence Conversions, which is a pop-up tool that allows you to create modals with tracking. And that was actually used on the LearnDash site, which was the example site that Amber and I were looking at of like, hey, this should be a button and it's not. And now automatically that is in the role button because of the update to Kadence Conversions. So the button, which if you're going to go look at that site, I
know,
don't know if
I could jump there.
I don't know if they've updated since our release
to the newest version. Yeah.
To the newest version.
But for people to see, I think it was down here, right? Yeah. So this is where if you trigger that, it triggers a modal. It says try learn-LMS.
Yeah. And so that is actually opening up a Kadence conversion. And there's another Kadence conversion that hits you on the exit intent.
That was my exit intent.
And yep, exactly. The modal one actually switches the button, tells it that, hey, this is opening up a modal. So it's the role and the you sent me what else it needed.
Aria has pop-up to tell someone on a screen reader it's going to open, so they don't get disconcerted when they shift their focus into the modal. Yeah. So.
Yep. And so there's things like, once you're in the modal, making sure that their tab is locked inside, you can move to the next thing, things like that.
But yeah. I will say I was so happy when you told me you could do that. And we were literally talking about this last week and you're like, oh yeah, I can do that. And you sent me an email and you're like, the LearnDash team says, and then like 2 hours later, you're like, wait, I have an idea for this. And I've already started coding it. And everyone watching, I sent Ben a link to a ticket that I had opened in the Gutenberg GitHub repo. I don't know, like 14 months ago. And I was just like, this is magic. Someone says there's an issue and it needs to be fixed. And here we go. And it's getting fixed the same week. So I appreciate that. I think that is like super wonderful that you guys care and that you are focusing on the accessibility on that front. So.
Yeah. I think for me, it's just such an important part of like, if this is going to be the builder tool that makes things easy for people, we should do it all the way, and accessibility is huge on that. So I think as we go into 4.0, some of the things we've been talking about is like, how do we make it, because like pitfalls are, didn't set the alt text on images, didn't set the colors right, your buttons don't have enough contrast, all that kind of stuff. we want to try to make a lot of those things, adding in this element of notices of like, hey, we're noticing that this isn't right. So you can immediately solve some of that stuff without getting on the line. And then the fact that everything will be global style, the idea is like, if your buttons are off, you can globally fix it. And then you don't have to go into every page where you've added buttons and change stuff like that. So yeah, we're really excited about global styles. I'm really, really pumped about the direction that we're taking that and how easy it's going to be to use. So
Awesome. Well, and we have quite a few people in the chat who I think are pretty excited too, uh, who have been using it. So Mighty Spark Design says longtime Kadence user, 8+ years, and accessibility for the last 3. So they're excited to be tuning in. So everyone, if you are tuning in and you have any comments or questions, feel free to throw those in for us. I kind of want to transition over to a few of the things that I couldn't figure out. And I want to follow up on one thing that came up during my remediation live stream. So for everyone who's not familiar, I've been working on the WP Product Talk website. I mentioned that earlier. You can go catch past live streams to catch them. But one of the things that came up was there's this episode grid with filters. And these links were using the overlay link, which made so that the entire card could be clickable. And the overlay link was empty because the person who built the site didn't realize, oh, I have to go fill in the title. And I know that you have since moved the title, so it's not collapsed. It's very visible. So it's more findable. But when I went to go do it, I noticed, oh, I can't set dynamic titles. So my workaround, I'll show this to you, and you can tell me how janky you think this is. I couldn't figure out how to like get the entire card clickable. So the best I could do was I made the image clickable, and I made the watch here link text that was already there clickable. And so this is in, it's like a Kadence element for the episode grid. It like pulls out the one thing. I wanted the alt text so you could get the image dynamic, but I couldn't get the alt text dynamic, or I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I totally flipped this image to HTML because I did figure out that there was a way to get the post title as dynamic in the caption, and then I wanted to make it screen reader only in the caption in the link. This is me like trying really hard to hack this so that the title would be dynamic and clickable. And then on my watch here, this is like a excerpt read more. I just added screen reader text in there, and I use a plugin called the screen reader text format plugin, which adds this so you can just stick screen reader text anywhere. So this results in an image that looks, let's see if I can figure out. So there's a link here on the image, and we've got the image with no alt text, because I don't want to pull the alt text from the media library, because the alt text from the media library isn't always the title of the post, which is where the link is going. Very weird, like things I'm trying to hack around, right? And then it's got the fig caption, but it's screen reader only. So that then reads as the purpose of the link, and it ignores the image. And then I've got my read more link that says watch here, that also has screen reader text with the title in it. But I saw that you changed this overlay link so it can be dynamic now. So instead of just saying like go to episode, I could actually put the episode title in here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, because when we were talking ahead of time, you were like, maybe we shouldn't use the overlay link. So
yeah,
that's my first question is, would what I did currently, do you think that's better than switching it back to an overlay link?
I do.
Okay.
I think what's tricky is that, well, and you're the accessibility expert, but you have to weigh two things here, and one of them is SEO, And SEO is all over the place in terms of like best practices and all of that kind of stuff. But like there is a like too many links issue with SEO where it's like I'd rather have one link than multiple things, or like if someone's looking at this and if your title was so like if your title was bold, large, a lot of people click on the title when they're
Now,
looking at a
these ones
post.
are weird because when they were originally designed, I didn't remove the title from this. Like this card was designed with no title. So I think like the text on the image is supposed to serve as the title, but I don't actually know if it's always identical, to be honest. I haven't dug into that.
So yeah, so like that's part of it too, of like if you have a title there, then all of a sudden you have a link on the image because some people will click the image, a link on the title, and then a link for the watch here or read more or whatever it is. And then there's like 3 links for every single one of those, which can look like, hey, you've got too many links internally. So that's where the overlay link can come in, is if like ultimately you just want to do that. The problem with the overlay link is then that description text, you can't select it because you'll be clicking a link that you don't even know
Oh
you're
yeah, so
clicking.
you mean like if I wanted to copy and paste this somewhere, I wouldn't be able to do it?
Correct, because you would have clicked the link. And so it kind of breaks the like normal expectation of an individual who's like seeing text, and they can't see an overlay link because it's invisible. It's just placed over the top of that whole area. And so there are good reasons for overlay links in terms of like use cases where you're using a background image for different reasons, or like you've got just certain components where it's like this is really a link and it's visually feels like a link, and the section block allows you to have hover effects and stuff like that, so that when a person is on the link, hovering over the link, it like can have a a background that changes or whatever that makes it feel like, okay, I'm interacting with this is a link. But general practice, I don't think it's like the best use case, especially for something like a post grid, where to me, I think you go with the 3 links, or the 2 in this case, of an image link and a watch here. The image issue of I want a dynamic image, but I don't want to pull in that image as alt text is really interesting. And we don't have a solve for that, but your solve is smart.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure it out.
Wanting.
I think the thing that was most frustrating was I couldn't the screen reader text format plugin that I use to do this kind of screen reader text, like here,
Yep.
it didn't work on the caption because the caption doesn't have the same WordPress toolbar.
Yep.
So I ended up having to flip this to HTML so that I could add a class to the caption, the fig caption tag, which normally, I mean, I could have edited it as HTML, but then WordPress will be like, you broke this block.
Yep.
Right? So I ended up just making it an HTML block. But
Yep. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's something that we can, we could solve, where it's like that's a good
yeah, if you're
use case
link an
for
image.
like if the link is dynamic, then we trigger that the alt text can have a dynamic component as well.
Or maybe even having like the instead of just the alt on the image, it could just be like an ARIA label on the link instead. Maybe.
Yeah.
Like if you're linking to a page, you should almost always just have the title of the page as the link text, because that communicates
Where
the
you're
purpose
going.
of the link.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in that case, and this is where I'm turning the tables on you, if I wrapped that image in a link, should the image have alt text still, even if I gave that link an ARIA label?
So if you gave the link an ARIA label, the ARIA label is going to override anything that is inside of it. So, which is actually what I think is better because it's less noisy. Because if you have a link with an image with alt text in it, it will say link, image, how to create a go-to-market strategy that drives sales on day one. If you have a link with ARIA label, it would say link, how to create a go-to-market. Like, it removes the fact that there's an image there, which really, when you're linking an image, in this case, it's kind of decorative.
Yeah.
And then ideally, when we get to the episode single, this image is there but not linked, and then I get the alt text that tells me, hey, it's got you know, people on it and the date or whatever else was important about the graphic. In this case, I did leave. Let me go back up here. I didn't add alt text to these because when there's nothing on the link, then it's going to read whatever's in, and I don't want it to describe the image and read the screen reader text. Because again, like, what's important is where we're going, not what this image looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, we just need to give that link a dynamic. If you're going to set the link dynamic, you should set the title dynamic, the area label. And that's the best
kind of
one.
like what you did
With
for
the
the
section
overlay
block.
itself.
Yeah.
For the
We just
section
need
block.
to do that same thing with the image link, making
Yeah.
that dynamic as well.
And I think you have convinced me that I am not going to add an overlay link back to this because of telling me a lot of users expect to be able to highlight text. So I think I'm going to leave this the way I kind of hacked it together for now. And
Yeah,
do
well,
anything
I
different.
mean, like I said, there is reason to use the overlay link. It's just one of those nuanced things of like, what is best becomes somewhat preference and not a golden rule, right? Like, this is like, it can work with an overlay link and it'll function fine. And for the extent that it's accessible, it is accessible.
Because it
But
reads, and that would be interesting because if I did the overlay link, I think I might actually want alt text on the image, because then it will just, the way it would be to a screen reader is it would read the image, it would read whatever text follows it, and then it would read the overlay link after, right?
Yep. Because the overlay link in the DOM comes after all of the content in the section, and then it sits on top of the content to your mouse. But to a screen reader, it just reads it as in the way that the DOM is presented.
Yeah. So Dave said something sort of interesting. He said some design systems use JS, so JavaScript, for block card links, which respects selecting text. Because I guess rather than CSS positioning.
Yeah, I'd have to look into that. That's not something I'm aware of, like what it's doing there. Because if I click, then it's got to be, if it's working the way it's saying, it means it's got to understand that I'm clicking and holding a click and dragging to select the text versus like clicking to follow a link. And that's like a level of listening,
That's very
JavaScript
complex.
listening. That's like, should you be doing that? I don't,
Yeah.
But
That's interesting.
If you're here still, I would love to know which design system you have seen that on. I'll go take a look. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. So another thing that I've been trying to figure out, and this is always interesting, right? When you use tools, sometimes accessibility tools, our tool, other accessibility tools can create noise, or they tag things that say, hey, we're not sure about this. A human needs to assess it. So one of the examples of that is, oh wait, I actually had this page open already. Look at this. Image that have empty alternative text. Some of these probably are, like that picture of me probably needs alternative text, but can I find one? Okay, this little guy here, and I'll show you where it is on a page. It shows up on the episode single, so it's just like a little decorative, I don't know, badge. So it's very decorative. Now, this is on every episode globally. And normally the easy solution for this in Accessibility Checker is I go over to my Fast Track tab and I find that image. Oh, wait, I should look at episodes, not pages. Hold on, episode. There we go. And I would find that image and create a global ignore. But it's always interesting when you look at different websites. We were talking about this before we went live. You can see there's 3 of them here. The reason why is the HTML snippet is not unique because this website is using a WordPress canonical plugin for performance that, like, I think modifies the code based on where it is. So if there's more paragraphs above this image because one episode has a longer description, I guess, then it is different. So a way that I know to get accessibility tools like ours to not say, hey, your alternative text is empty, is I can also do role equals presentation. I tried in one of our past live streams to use a plugin I've used before to add attributes to blocks, which is literally called like attributes for blocks, and it's free on WordPress.org. But it added it to the figure tag, not the image. So I was curious, is there a way in Kadence that I could mark this as decorative or add a custom attribute to a block so that I won't have to get reminded about this on every episode page?
Yeah. The making it decorative is something we'll just add like a little button inside the image block. And that you messaged that to me and I was like, I'm gonna start coding that now. So I would expect that in the next block release. The can you add attributes is tricky in that yes and no. Unfortunately, with the way that Gutenberg works, if you add attributes, it will basically tell you like, hey, this doesn't match what the block is supposed to output, and so it's going to not work.
Oh yeah, that's though, like I was saying before, it'll tell you this is broken.
It's tell you it's broken. Exactly.
Yeah,
and
like I
that's
thought
not,
about this. Like I don't think I can just go to this and like flip it to HTML, right, and like edit it. I think it would break it.
Yeah, it would break the block in the sense
and
of
this is the one I tried using and it doesn't work.
Yeah. So yeah, on the Kadence image block, we'll add a little, just a little toggle there for like, this is decorative, and that would add the role presentation.
Yeah, so then once that's out, I would just need to replace, because I think that's a core image block, and I just need to use this image advanced.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Which you can transform that too, but yeah.
Oh, really? How do I do that? Oh, like this?
Yeah.
Let's see. Click on that. Cool. So I'm assuming there'll be like a toggle here for that at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did like this little fix you added. Can you explain this, the dynamic alt text toggle on your image block?
Yeah, so the way that Gutenberg stores an image block is that it stores it as a section of HTML. So it's not globally sourcing the actual what's in the media library. So if you go right now into your media library and add alt text to that image, it won't update the alt text on all of your pages because the core way in which Gutenberg decided alt text should work is that alt text should be based on context, meaning like where I placed it is going to affect what the alt text is going to be. So when you set it into that top box, and this is how the core image alt text works as well, I'm not setting that alt text for all of my times I use that image. I'm setting the alt text for the one time I've used that image. Now, if you have alt text set in your media library, when you drop the image in, it's going to drop in the alt text that you have. But then if you start editing it there, it's not going to resync back to the media library. So this, by doing the toggle there, it's just basically saying, you know what, I want the media library to have preference. And part of that is because there's more and more tools now. We built one internally that we're probably going to release, and that is to get AI to generate an alt text for you for all of your images. Just one click, do it all for all my images so they have alt text. And then if you're going to do that, you want them to all be dynamically pulling in from the media library. And then you go through the media library and be like, okay, the AI did a good job. And with one swoop, you can be like, here's all my alt text is done.
But you'd have to go through every image first and toggle this on, or is there a bulk way to, it'd be cool if you had a button somewhere in your settings that's like, go find all my images and turn this on.
So Yes, that is something we're going to do. Right now it's off by default, but like 4.0 blocks, it'll be on by default and you'll have to turn it off. Part of that is if we put it on by default, we'd be breaking existing users alt text. And that's the weird, funky thing sometimes with like migrations in Gutenberg. So blocks, new blocks that are in 4.0, the original block will still exist. That'll still function. Everything will do the same way. There's not going to be any breakage, but the new one will have it on by default. And then it'll be something that you can globally set and then set sectionally as well.
So I might throw you for a loop here. I don't think that it should be on by default. I do think there should be a way for users to be like, I want to turn this on for like images in the section or for like my whole site if they choose to do that. But I'm worried about people inserting images, setting a alt text that makes sense for that page, and then inserting the same image somewhere else and using alt text that makes sense on page 2 but not on page 1, and not realizing that when they edited the media library, it was going to edit page 1.
So the way that this works when on is if you have alt text, it'll pull it in and show you that alt text, but won't let you edit it. If you want to edit it, you actually have to open up the modal that goes to the media library. So then it's kind of clear, like, this is what it is. If I want to edit it locally, I turn off dynamic alt text, and then I can edit it locally, or I can go and edit what's in the media library and change it for everywhere. That's the idea.
Yeah.
It is one that,
as long
like,
as the media library flags for you, you could be editing this on.
yes.
Right. So it's you're very aware that you could be changing more than just future uses of that image.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will say it's interesting to hear that you're doing a AI alt text solution. I totally have a video on our YouTube channel from me testing a bunch of these a couple weeks ago that might be interesting for you to look at. I really want them to work, but I have not figured out a way for it to actually do what I think it should do. Some of them are, I think alttext.ai is probably the closest, but I would tell you, I think that one of the things that would be coolest and would make this most beneficial for the most people is if you mixed not just a image interpretation and large language model, but if you also included facial recognition. Like Google has this, I think Microsoft has an API for it too. Because what I really want is we talked about this on this website when I was doing it. Let me go to like just the home page. Because the whole conversation about being able to have alt text label this image as Matt and this image as Zach, as opposed to man with glasses.
Yeah.
Right? Which is okay. How would you know who they are? So it's almost like you want to be able to train your AI alt text on who are the people you frequently have photos of on your website. Like some websites won't have that. They'll just all have stock photos. But there's a lot of websites or personal blogs where it's going to be the same people.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be my request that I feel like would really make one of these stand out.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, you're right. Like ours, well, the one that we have tested with won't do that. It won't do image recognition. The idea is that you have to approve it all, right? Like, so you would go through and you would say, like, it wrote it for me, but I'm just going to update this to like, instead of man with glasses, this is Matt. And just create that in a smooth interface to where it's quick. Whereas like right now, bulk editing alt text in WordPress is not great experience. Yeah. But
well, I like that you're going to have an approval process.
I'm gonna take away.
I'm gonna about that is it could generate all this stuff, and it could be really bad, and no one approved it. And that is one of the things. Like when you see some of the accessibility lawsuits, they'll frequently say, like the ones with overlays. One of the complaints about the overlays is that the overlays attempt to generate alt text, and they'll do it for decorative images, which is not helpful. And they'll have wrong alt text for things. And that's something that screen reader users frequently complain about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would go through an approval, but it would be more about the UI for making it easy to manage. I am going to take away though and just see like, I wonder if we can, because even if you could just label the names, like, hey, this person is.
This is a technology that I know has been around for a really long time, because did you ever use Picasa? It was Google's in like 2004 to 2010. It was their like photo library and image editing.
Yep.
And it had the ability, because I used to use it for all of my photos, like with my kids, and it would pop up all these different pictures and be like, we think all these people are the same.
Yep.
Who are they? And then you gave them a name. And then what was really cool using it for my kids is I could be like, I want to find pictures of Nora. I
Yep.
would just search that, and then I'd find like all the pictures with her in it, right?
Yep.
So
yeah, we do that quite a lot. We do a picture wall for our kids on their birthday. So then we just go into our phones and click on the kid, and then you see the pictures from the last year. Yeah.
With that kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to see that in WordPress. I'll put that on my wish list for you.
That's cool.
That's why you came, right? To hear my wish list.
Well, no, I mean, it's always helpful. I always love finding out what are the things that just create a little bit of annoyance that you're like, oh, we could solve that.
Yeah. I'll send you that video link too, because it is kind of interesting. You can see some of my frustrations. This, again, like I'm like, interesting things with this website. This website converts all images to, I don't even know, let me see, a format that I had never heard of. This comes from that WordPress canonical plugin. They're not WebP. They're like something else. What are they? Oh, well, that's a JPEG. So I don't know. But there were a bunch of them that were converted to some format. I had SWF. Is that an image format?
There's an
I don't know.
AVIF.
Oh, AVIF? Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. But a bunch of the alt text generating plugins, I think, didn't support that. And so they just failed. So
yeah,
I don't know.
it's a weird
it's always
format.
interesting, right? All the different scenarios you have to test on.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so while we were on the homepage, I'm sort of curious, and I don't know if you have an answer to this, but Matt and I were talking about replacing this carousel that is here, which this is just a gallery carousel, with something else that was not a carousel. But the challenge I ran into is that these are not posts. They are terms in a taxonomy, with term meta for like the image and the bio, and I think social media handles and all that kind of stuff. I cannot find, either in Kadence or Core, and maybe I'm missing this, do you know of a way to create like a query loop or like a grid of taxonomy terms, not posts?
There's not a way in Kadence.
Okay.
And I don't know of a tool in WordPress. It's something we've talked about in Kadence, because there's a few use cases where it could be nice for organizational purposes. So like WooCommerce traditionally is the large use for this, where it's like you just want to see like all of your shoe category, but you want to be able to show shoes and shirts and whatever in a grid that has like an image and a link and things like that. So that would be like your traditional use case. I would argue that this is not a use case for taxonomies. That you're doing something wrong
the people thing should be a post. I don't even, let me see. Are these okay? So they do link
to me.
But that just links to an episode, which doesn't make sense.
But well, that's what I was going to ask you is like, do you want them to link to author pages? Right now you're like in this, you're on guest.
Yeah, so what this is the plugin uses, somewhere I'm going to find it. Okay, so it uses Seriously Simple Podcasting.
Okay.
And guests is a taxonomy of episodes. And so like this right here, there we go. All episodes with Leslie Sim is a term archive for the guest taxonomy. I think it makes sense because this is what we want. Now, that said, I think we could probably, from a design standpoint, pull some of that term meta in here and like have her picture and all that stuff. But ultimately, the like where that linked before is probably not where it should have linked. Like it should have linked here, and I think you should be able to click on that and see all of the episodes that this person has been on.
Okay. So
because we do have a few that
if
have
that's how
poetic
you,
accounts.
yeah, if that's how
More than
you
one.
want it to work,
Right.
you you can certainly yeah, that's the right use case for why we have said we should probably build this into Kadence. If it was to link to posts, I would say like you should just use the post and pull in that taxonomy data into your query, which you can do as well with dynamic content, and just say that. As a workaround right now, you can create a post query loop that has where you individually select the episodes with guests that you want to feature. So let's just say you picked 10 episodes and the guests that were in those episodes are the episodes that you want to feature. Then you could pull into that query loop, hey, I want to pull in the guest image, I want to pull in their name and their link, their taxonomy link. And so it's kind of a workaround for like you're using posts as the main thing that's queried, but you're actually getting data from the taxonomy that's attached to that post.
Okay, I kind of want to. I want you to show me because I'm curious about this. Okay, so I'm just gonna do this on a fake page. So I would use a Kadence query loop.
Yeah. Now,
Like this
caveat
query
here.
loop advanced.
Yeah,
Or
it's
WordPress
not
one.
going. Yeah, the query loop advanced. It's not going to give you the carousel.
Yeah, we don't want the carousel.
Okay. So now
I will say I would love to be able to put a pause button on that carousel. If you're taking notes.
Yeah, well, we do have a carousel, a post carousel block that's just simpler that you can do, and then the advanced query loop carousel is on our list. So yeah, go no filters, and then choose the podcast as your post type.
Okay.
By the way, I have not
like
tested this, so we're very likely to run into things where I'm like, oh shoot, you can't grab that data, but we'll see, because some of it, it's going to think to look for ACF data, and we haven't told Kadence about all of the metadata associated with guests, and so we're going to have to like do some funky stuff to try to pull that in.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is being created by ACF.
Okay. So if it is, then it should be something we can pull in. There's some relational stuff you can do in ACF that we could do as well to try to make that work. But yeah, this is interesting. I'm curious how far we get.
It's an experiment, and if it doesn't work, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Then I go to ChatGPT and I say, create a short code for me that does this, and here are all of the slugs and everything you need to know about. And then it creates a short code for me.
Yeah. Claude is right now my favorite for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I need to stop using. I still use Sublime, and I think I really need to switch to Visual Studio Code so I can use more. Like Gemini and stuff works in there.
But the major one now is Cursor. It's got a very, very good integration with AI, and you can use different language models in there, but it mostly defaults to Claude, and it is exceptionally good at doing complex code stuff where it has to look at the documents that you have in your code base and then write stuff for you.
I really think so. Okay, well, that's really helpful. I will have to check that out.
Yeah, it's cool. It's super cool.
All right, so you're gonna tell me. Let's experiment with this and see. It'd be interesting. Even can we get their photo, right?
Yeah. So you're gonna create a new card.
So like create new here.
Yeah, because you've got the query loop. Now you got to create the query card. So you could just do something like simple. And there you can name it. And
oh, I didn't.
So I would say first thing would be go to the wrapper.
Oh, we're
And
gonna
what
know what these things are called. Should I open
your list
ACF?
view? We'll see. We'll because Cadence will pull it in if it's easy to pull in. But
Okay,
because
so
it's a metadata on the taxonomy, it's gonna get weird here. I think we're gonna have to go into ACF and make a relationship with the taxonomy to be able to then pull in that data. But we'll
go to the wrapper like this, query card.
go to the query loop and let's just limit the ones that we're dealing with down to like one. So you just have a lot less that you're like looking at. I like to do
Looking
this,
at.
even though I know that in the end I'm gonna do more. So like just do your results, just make it one.
Just this, no, that's results per page, or still do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then what I would do, because we're working in it in a smaller, like we want to see the list view and stuff, I would just make your columns two, which you do in the card.
I do in the
Kind of want,
actual card.
yeah.
Okay.
So then now we grab the image and we're gonna have to see if we can source that image from the taxonomy.
Dynamically.
So let's see, dynamically open it up. And instead of featured image, you're gonna see if you can grab, so you need a meta relationship because it's not going to do a taxonomy meta.
But I don't, oh, wait. Oh, because you can't get taxonomy. Archive custom field?
Yeah, that's really for like an actual taxonomy page because it needs to get the global like
Oh,
archive set. It's not like that's like when
yeah.
it
It
knows that
wouldn't
there's
know what
one
term.
taxonomy, it wouldn't know what term to use there. So, okay. So I'm sending you down a rabbit hole that doesn't work. It's got to be, we got to create a meta relationship. So, gosh, there's like a video. Kathy Zant did a video on this with like a cat site where she showed like how you do meta relationships. And I think I've done one too. But
Oh man, yeah. Do you
essentially,
have a link you can throw in the YouTube chat and then maybe you can watch it later?
let me see if I can find it.
Because I know we've got 12 minutes.
Yeah, we're not going to get
And
to the
this is
bottom of
not the
this.
WordPress speed build, so we are not gonna like
Yeah,
make you
yeah.
sweat it out for 12 minutes
Well,
trying to
because
teach
like
me how to do this.
yeah, because we'd have to go into ACF, create a meta relationship field, and then connect some of those things together so that I can see it.
Or I can wait, and in Kadence, you'll build a way to query terms.
Yeah, in Cadence, we'll create a way to query terms, and then even that, and that's like weird because it's querying not a post. So then all of the stuff like your featured image has to be, it's not a featured image anymore. It's like it's literally just going to pull from metadata in that term.
Yeah,
Term
and so people
metadata.
would have that would definitely be a more advanced user who would use one of those because they would have had to have already created all of their term meta fields custom themselves.
Yep.
Yeah. So it totally makes sense to me why you don't have that. But
There's
I would
use
love to see the
cases.
video on the workaround. That would be cool. All right. So I want to jump back a little bit. Those were the main things that I wasn't sure about. And I'm sort of curious what are there any other accessibility features that we haven't talked about that exist in Cadence that you think everybody should be aware of?
No, I mean, mostly I don't like. There's accessibility things that are happening where we're making certain decisions to try to improve stuff, but we're not making it an opt-in. Like, hey, you need to know about this so you can set it. It's like, well, if we think it's that important, we're going to just set it for you. So there's things we do with navigation that I think is way more intuitive for screen readers and for tabbing, like if you're just using keyboard to tab through navigation, than what a lot of sites
Mm-hmm.
have. So that's like one that's like always to me like the perfect example of like what's technically accessible versus what's best practice. and tabbing through your nav where you have the link and then the actual
So that's
icon
the
because
link.
it's a button, is that icon right there, and that opens up the sub menu, but you can move on past it without having to open up that sub menu. You go to a lot of websites, themes. To get over to blog, I would have had to tab through every subnav item. And if you've got a mega menu or like a big complex menu, that's really frustrating to have to like tab through a million different things and open up every single thing just to get over to the fourth nav item or whatever. So there's things like that that we're trying to build in that just is like, hey, this is just going to do it for you. There's things with our JavaScript stuff, like from the way that we're doing the sliders and things like that, which I mean, there's even some improvements we want to make there with stuff. But in general, I think the idea is for us to try to really focus on making things, best
Yeah.
practice. So another
I
thing
did.
that you'll notice right out the gate when you were tabbing through is that
Mhm.
the focus ring shows up when you're tabbing and
Yep.
doesn't when you're clicking. And we
Oh, so
do
if I
that
click that,
intentionally. See
yeah.
how the focus ring didn't show up? We do that
Mhm.
intentionally because it's a real design um, jarring experience to be moving your mouse around a page and having and like interacting with the page and having these focus rings come up. But for tabbing, you need to know where you are, and sometimes just changing the color of the like link is not enough to make it very obvious when you're just trying to like tab through a site. So there's things like that that are built in.
Yeah. I did notice this carousel, if I turn on prefers reduced motion
That's what
on
I
my
knew you were
operating
going to talk about
system,
that.
it
I knew.
doesn't
Yeah.
autoplay, which I appreciated. I
Yeah,
do
that's
think though
one.
this needs a setting in the block where I could be like, turn on a pause button.
Yeah. That
So
so a pause button is what we want to put in there, and there's a couple things with like some of our animation stuff that doesn't listen to reduced prefers reduced motion that we're trying to
oh, like if something
get
fades
into.
up or
Correct.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I always just tell people don't use fade up animations on websites.
Yeah, I
I
mean
don't know.
they add a level of sometimes design is a feeling that you get and not necessarily something you can directly just prescribe to layout and stuff. And
Yeah.
animations are a great way to create a feeling when so much of layout and stuff like that is just done. But like color is another one. But yeah, it's tricky, right? It's tricky to get that right and
My
then to
thing
make it.
about them is on my phone when I'm like looking for something on a website and it's a website I visited before and I kind of know this is down towards the bottom. I'll go really fast. And then I hate when I get to the thing and then I have to sit there for a second and wait for it to fade up.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
literally like, it is my own personal. I hate them because they slow me down.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Which
maybe
I mean,
it shouldn't be on mobile. I don't know, you know?
yeah, it's like one of those things. And I mean, you can do we have some mobile settings for ours, but like it's one of those things where um you need to understand what your customers want. And a lot of times, if you're a site that's like, I just need to get in and do this, and feeling is aside, like you need to get that data to them, and it's all about speed and it's all about getting that up. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe like on an art site or a site that people are intended to like read thoughtfully or something. I don't know, right? As opposed to your city website. Like, I just want to figure out how to pay my water bill. I don't
yeah,
really need your content to animate in.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So uh I'm curious, is there anything that you see people do with Cadence that you wish they wouldn't from like a user experience standpoint?
I mean, like certainly colors are all over the place on on
Mm.
people's sites. So we did the color palette, the 9 color palette, and part of that was like, if we get people to think this way, then they'll make better decisions when they're selecting colors because they've already kind of fallen into a layout of like, these are contrast colors, just background colors. And then, with like the way that we do AI right now, where we generate for you that color palette to try to make it have enough contrast. That's one that like I just, it's so easy to pick colors and not think about the contrast ratio. So it's one that we want to surface better when people are picking colors inside of Kadence and designing their site. But it's one that I think is like the
putting
most.
warnings in the editor or in the customizer that these colors don't contrast well.
Yeah,
That would
because
be cool.
it's like very common. You get on the site, you're like, oof. I mean, we do it internally. It's we have all these web designers too, and it's always shocking how it's not the first thing they think about. And I get it. You want the freedom to think about color outside of like contrasting, but like still, you go look at these designs, you're like, this won't pass for accessibility. We can't like, and that's like it's hard to get in that mindset. And so I get why everyone can make that mistake, but it's one that like we want to surface better. And I think it's the probably the most common thing I see. That missing alt text as far as what people are doing. I think there's another one, and this is not like our tools let you build a page a lot of different ways, and so I'll see a lot of nested, and I see that like even with like core stuff with group blocks, like just tons of nesting. And I get it at times, like there's certain types of nesting that's needed, but like times it's a little bit overkill just for your DOM structure in terms of speed. And not actual speed. This is where it gets weird, just in terms of like the way that Google decides what's fast and what's slow.
Scores things on page speed score. Like it might actually be really fast, but it could still ding you for having too many nested divs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or just having a DOM size that's large.
Yeah. I very much appreciate you joining and everybody who tuned in to watch and said hello in the chat. Where can people follow up with you if they want to follow up? It's the best place to find you.
Our Facebook group is a good spot. Like, I'm not in there every day. I try to keep some semblance of sanity, and also I have 4 small kids. So right now, like a lot of life is like 2 3-year-olds, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So like, it's busy.
Yeah. I'm in the same space with 4, but mine are a little more spread out, so it makes it slightly easy. We're teaching one to drive now, and I'm thinking I might not have to drive her to school at really early in the morning anymore. That would be cool, although also terrifying.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, our Facebook group, you can go to the Kadence page and see that. That's a good spot. I'm in there off and on. And then you can always reach out to me on Twitter or probably Twitter or X, I should say.
Yeah, and what's your handle on there? Just Benjamin Ritner, right?
Benjamin Ritner, yeah.
Super easy to find.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate all of the hard work that you guys are putting in over at Stellar on the accessibility front.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.